The first step in resolving any conflict is to first take a step back and look at things impartially. When you're in the midst of a conflict with your siblings, with your family, with your friends, with your spouse, or with anyone in general, we tend to exaggerate things that weren't really that big, and we tend to minimize things that maybe were that big or were that big to the other person. And that's where the concept of looking at things impartially and controlling your own anger and your own ego comes into play. It's imperative to understand that we as individuals make mistakes, and we as individuals need to learn from our mistakes. If we let our anger and our ego dictate our actions, then the final outcome would be based off of our emotions rather than what was actually happening in that moment. So suppose you and your friend got into an argument, a really bad argument. The first thing that you want to do is to calm yourself, and that's where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned different approaches as well. Where if you're standing, sit down. If you're sitting, lay down, and not just that, also change what you're doing. Like drink a glass of water, go for a jog, go for a walk, go do some exercise, go pray, do something to change the environment. Because when you're zoomed in on a particular area, it's very difficult to plug out and look at things holistically. And that's actually where a very famous Arabic saying, "Attaqi ghadab al-halim," fear the anger of the one who is typically forbearing. If you are someone who is always angry, then naturally people will assume that no matter what the situation is, you will approach it with anger. And they will be less likely to communicate things with you. As opposed to someone who is naturally very calm and naturally very composed. If they become angry now, everyone would naturally think that, oh, this is a big deal and I do need to give this attention. So try not to be someone who is always full of anger, full of hatred, full of ego, full of, in general, just full of himself. Rather approach a situation in a calm and composed manner. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that one of the signs of a hypocrite is وَإِذَا خَاصَمَ فَجْرٍ. When they get into an argument, they transgress, they become violent, they become angry, they start bringing up the past. Hey, you did that, you did this. I did so much for you and this is how you're repaying me. Because all of that comes under manipulation. All of that comes under putting the blame essentially on someone else. And we as Muslims, we do not bring up the past. We do not bring up dirt on someone just to throw it at their face. That is not the prophetic way. That is not the way that Islam teaches us. We are someone who when conflict approaches us, we look at things impartially. We try to zoom out and look at the whole picture rather than zooming in and focusing on the specific areas. Interestingly enough, this is also where most of the spousal issues happen, where you're too zoomed in to actually focus on what's happening around you, and you don't let yourself zoom out. You don't let yourself see the bigger picture, and then things struggle into different forms of either divorce or just general abuse. So to avoid that, as a whole, the first thing that we need to build is emotional intelligence. And think of it like this: essentially, you should try to look at things with how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at us. Look at situations with mercy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will look at us with mercy as well. Because the way we treat other people is exactly the same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will treat us.